Hey everybody, thanks for checking out my channel Outside with Jeff. Today we're going to discuss aquariums, particularly freshwater aquariums and breeding of fish. So recently, if you've been tuning into my channel at all, you'll see that I've recently bred some African cichlids, the Crebensis cichlids. So right now the fry are 6 days old. Everything's going just fantastic. And I just thought there's probably a lot of new aquarists or people with aquariums, and they're wanting to get into fish breeding, or maybe they've thought about trying it out. So I thought I'd make this little video and give you some kind of advice and tips and tricks along the way. I've had aquariums majority of my life. At one time I had 5 aquariums. I used to have a 55, a 55-gallon tank, a 39-gallon bow front, which I still have, 2 20s and 2 10s. So that's actually 6 tanks. I used to have 6 tanks at one time. But the majority of my life I've had fish, whether it be I used to have a fish tank that looked like Garfield's head. I had a bubblegum machine fish tank. I've had several 20-gallon tanks. I've had a couple 55-gallon tanks over the years. I've had bow front tanks. I've had octagon tanks. I've pretty well had the majority of the tanks that you see in your local pet store. So let's just get right into it. First thing you want to do if you're thinking about breeding fish is you need to give the fish, whatever fish you decide to breed, you need to make sure that the fish tank is set up for their preferences. So some fish are cave dwellers, some like aquatic plants, some like a sandy substrate, some like rock. So you need to make sure that the habitat that you're building for them is what they prefer to have. They're going to feel most comfortable if you have their habitat, what they're used to. Some fish like driftwood, some fish look like rocky structure, some fish need places to hide to feel comfortable. So that's number one. When you're figuring out what kind of fish tank you need to get, you need to take into consideration what kind of fish you want to have, and that the tank's large enough for not only the fish, but the types of features you want to put in the tank. Fish are going to be less likely to breed if they're stressed out, and a fish that does not have enough room to feel comfortable is therefore going to be stressed out. Also, you need to make sure that you're taking care of all its just standard requirements. The temperature of the water, the pH of the water, the hardness of the water. You gotta watch out for your nitrates and nitrites. You want to make sure that none of your numbers are out of whack, because once again, that's going to lead to your fish being stressed out. And when fish are stressed out, they're not going to be as prone to breeding, or they're not going to be as successful at breeding and giving you your baby fish that you're wanting. So once you've got the fish happy, you've brought them home from the fish store, you have your water ready to go. When you're first setting up a fish tank, you might lose a few fish. Don't let that be discouraged. That's just your fish tank cycling at first until your nitrites and nitrates get lined out and your tank's fully cycled and the good bacteria has become established. You could lose some fish along the way. So don't let that discourage you. But once your tank's fully cycled, I've always found it takes a couple months, then you can start trying to see about potentially breeding your fish. So what I always like to do is you want to just keep your fish happy. You want to get them into a routine. I know this sounds weird. They're just fish, right? Well, fish in the wild have a routine. It's night and it's daytime. So if you have a lit aquarium, you need to make sure that every evening you're turning off the light, and in the morning you're turning it back on. That's just going to help them get into a good routine. It's going to keep the fish, they're going to get settled in, they're going to get comfortable, and then that's just going to help you along the way. Number 2, you're going to want to make sure you actually have a male and a female. So when you're determining what kind of fish you want to breed, I would recommend getting a fish that's easily to sex the fish. So what I mean by sexing the fish is you need to make sure that you actually have a male and a female fish. What I've found is Some fish are extremely difficult to tell if it's a male or a female, while others are extremely easy. I would recommend starting with some of the easier ones and moving on from there. Whenever I buy my fish, I don't buy a lot of fish, so if I'm trying to set up a breeding pair, I just get one male and one female, put them in the tank. Eventually they're going to get along and they're going to start to breed. It's not like they're going to be aggravated at each other from the fish store, yada, yada, yada. You don't need to get one male and two females and see which one the male likes, or two males and two females. That's really just going to complicate things, because as the fish are trying to breed, or they're getting into that breeding thought process, they're going to see those other fish as competition and threats. And that's just going to make the situation harder. So just get two fish, get a male and a female, leave them in the tank, let them get settled in. And don't be discouraged if you don't have fry within a few weeks. It takes time. The African cichlids, I had just the two fish, a male and a female, in the tank. It took about 5.5 to 6 months for them to get settled into the tank and to lay their first set of eggs, and for them to be fertilized successfully and hatch out into baby fry. So, is it always going to take that long? No. But just expect that it's going to take a little bit of time. The fish have to become comfortable. They have to get settled into the tank. They have to know that everything's going to be okay. And then eventually, nature will take over and the fish will go about their spawning rituals. Also, you need to know, what are you going to be doing with the baby fish once you have them? Plan ahead. Are you going to try to sell them? Is there a pet store around that'll sell them? I have a couple pet stores within 25 minutes of my home. They will buy fish from you as long as it's a fish that they sell on a regular basis. Keep that in mind. Chances are, if you're breeding guppies, you're not going to have a market for guppies. But I've bred convicts in the past. I've bred swordtails in the past. I've bred angelfish in the past. African cichlids in the past. All of those you can generally have a market for, especially the angelfish, which those can take a bit of work, a bit of time, but it pays off. You can sell them to a pet store anywhere from $4 to $5 because they generally sell them for $10 to $12. You can expect to get about 40% of what their retail is. That's generally, so if they have a fish for $10, you can generally expect to get about $4. If they're selling a fish for $5, you're probably only going to get approximately $2 back. Keep that in mind. A lot of the fish stores that you sell to, they don't actually like to give out cash. They'd prefer to give you store credit, because then not only are they paying 40% of retail, they're exchanging it with store credit on things that they have a markup on. So essentially, it's only costing them 20% of retail, but you're getting the money to then exchange for retail goods that you will need for your aquarium. I like to use that to buy the feed, buy chemicals that you may have to treat your water with, different things like that. So just something to keep in mind, how you're going to get rid of, sell, or give away the baby fish that you come up with. Because let's be honest, if you have a tank with 2 fish in it and then all of a sudden you have 50 babies, here in a few months, you're going to have way too many fish for that tank. Definitely something to keep in mind. Also, what are the baby fish going to eat? That comes to another point I need to discuss. Cleanliness of your tank. So whenever I know I'm breeding fish, I like my tanks to look good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting you neglect your tank, but it's okay if you have a few pieces of structure, substrate, or features in the tank that you allow to grow algae, because those baby fry are going to need to have something to eat. In the current situation I'm in, I have a few caves in there and some aquatic plants, artificial plants, and I've allowed those to grow algae on them. This is allowing the fry to actually eat the algae. The parent fish, this particular breed of fish they're very good parents. the parents actually will swim the school of fry over to the algae, they'll feed, and then they'll swim to other areas of the tank. You need to keep this in mind because A, you want to make sure your fish have things to eat so that they can survive. You don't want to go through all this trouble to breeding fish and then you're fry to starve it to death. So you need to make sure that there's something in the tank for them to eat. Also, you cannot clean your tank while you have baby fry in there. They're going to get stressed out, the parents will get stressed out, and you may actually end up killing some of them in the cleaning process. Also, anyone who's at an aquarium, when you clean it, the water gets all cloudy and nasty until it settles out. You have a little baby fry in there. You don't need to be putting that additional stress on those fish. So I recommend keeping your tank clean, but also keeping some items in there that have some algae on them so that your future spawned fish can have something to eat on and they don't have to always rely on your pelleted food, flake food, liquid food, or frozen food, whatever you choose to feed your fish. Keep in mind, like I said, you cannot clean your tank while the babies are little. This may end up being a slight eyesore. Just try to let things go, and then once your fish have reached about a 1/2 inch in size, then you can go ahead and get in there and do a light cleaning. Once the fish are basically taking prepared food, whether it be flake, frozen, or pellets, basically regularly, you see them feeding at the surface or whatever level that particular breed of fish feeds at, then you can go ahead and consider cleaning your tank. But I would recommend leaving some algae items in there because once again, those baby fry, they're going to be used to eating that algae and they're going to keep on feeding on that through the process of the tank. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you probably are going to want to keep a few of those fish that you bred, and you're probably going to want to get rid of the rest. Just remember, you're now responsible for all these fish. Please be responsible and think ahead of where these fish are going to go. Don't end up with an overstocked tank and every fish in there stressed out and you're just pulling your hair out saying, what have I done? Think ahead, plan ahead, and be successful. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this video on breeding fish. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I think that I've covered everything pretty thoroughly. Until next time, have a great day.